The gold wedding band felt like a shackle as Eleanor twisted it off her finger, the bruises on her wrist still purple from where Richard had grabbed her 3 nights ago. She stood outside the trading post in Silver Creek, the Montana wind cutting through her torn dress, her stomach hollow with hunger. 2 days she'd been running, sleeping in abandoned barns, stealing water from horse troughs. The ring was all she had left, her mother's ring, given to a man who'd promised love and delivered fists instead. "I'll trade this for bread and a night's lodging," she said to the bearded clerk inside, her voice barely steady. Through the window, she could see him eyeing the ring, then her bruised face, calculating. "Before you continue with Eleanor's journey, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. It truly means the world to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening from today? Please let us know in the comments." "That ring's worth more than bread, ma'am," a deep voice said behind her. Eleanor spun around, instinctively stepping back. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair touching his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore a simple work shirt and leather vest, dust from the trail on his boots, a kindness in his face that made her throat tight. "But gold isn't what you need right now." Eleanor's hand closed protectively around the ring. "I don't need charity." Wasn't offering charity. He gestured to the mountain range visible beyond the town. "I'm Jacob Brennan. Run a homestead up in those peaks. Lost my cook last month when he decided mining was easier than my mother's biscuit recipe." A slight smile softened his weathered features. "Pays fair. Room, board, and wages. Honest work, if you're willing." She studied him, searching for the deception, the trap. Men didn't help women for free. "Why would you offer this to a stranger?" "Because I recognize someone running from something evil," Jacob said quietly, his eyes flickering to her bruised wrist. "And I've got 4 walls, a strong door, and I give you my word, you'll be safe." The sincerity in his voice made something crack inside her chest. Eleanor nodded once, sharp, before she could second-guess survival. The ride up the mountain took 3 hours on Jacob's sturdy mare, Eleanor seated behind him, her arms wrapped tentatively around his waist. He didn't speak much, just pointed out landmarks: the creek where he caught trout, the meadow where elk grazed at dawn, the lightning-struck pine that marked the turn to his property. The homestead appeared as they crested a ridge, and Eleanor caught her breath. A solid log cabin sat in a clearing, smoke curling from the chimney, surrounded by towering pines and aspens turning gold with autumn. A barn, a chicken coop, a vegetable garden showing the last of summer's harvest. Beyond, the mountains rose like sentinels, peaks already dusted with snow. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's isolated," Jacob said, helping her down. His hands on her waist were gentle, releasing her the moment her feet touched ground. "Nearest neighbor's 5 miles down. Some find the silence unsettling. I find it perfect." He showed her the cabin, a main room with a stone fireplace, but kitchen area with a cast-iron stove, 2 small bedrooms separated by a thick wool curtain. Simple furniture he'd built himself, shelves lined with books, which surprised her. "You read?" Eleanor asked, touching the spine of a Shakespeare collection. "Winter nights are long up here," Jacob said, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. "Reading passes the time." "I wasn't judging. I love books." She hadn't held one since her wedding day, when Richard had thrown her copy of Jane Eyre into the fire, saying wives didn't need fantasies. Jacob's expression softened. "Then borrow any you like. Library small, but yours to use. That first night, Eleanor cooked supper, venison stew with potatoes and carrots from the garden. Jacob ate in appreciative silence, then cleaned his plate and hers, insisting she rest after the journey. She sat by the fire, watching him move efficiently through tasks, noting how he kept distance between them, how he'd given her the larger bedroom without question. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked into the quiet. Jacob paused, hands in the wash basin. When he turned, his face held old pain. "Had a sister once, Sarah. She married a man in Denver who seemed decent. Took us 2 years to find out he wasn't." His jaw tightened. By the time I got there, she was already gone. He'd beaten her so badly. He stopped, swallowed hard. So when I see a woman with that look in her eyes, the one that says she's calculating if survival is worth the cost, I remember Sarah. And I think maybe saving one person makes up for failing her. Eleanor's eyes burned. "You didn't fail your sister. The man who hurt her failed. Just like Richard failed me. Your husband, for 3 months, felt like 3 years." She stared into the flames. "He told me I was his property, that I'd never leave, that no one would believe a worthless woman over a respected merchant." "You're not property," Jacob said fiercely. "You're a person, and you're worth saving." The words hit her like a benediction. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Days turned into weeks, and Eleanor found rhythm in the mountain life. She rose before dawn to start the fire, baked bread that Jacob praised enthusiastically, tended the chickens, preserved the last vegetables before frost. Jacob worked the land, chopping wood, repairing the barn roof, hunting for winter meat. They moved around each other like dancers learning new steps, careful not to collide, always aware. He taught her to ride properly, not side saddle, but astride like a man. "You need to control the horse," he explained, adjusting her grip on the reins, his hand over hers sending unexpected warmth through her arm. "Out here, riding well might save your life someday." She learned to shoot too. Jacob set up targets behind the barn, showed her how to hold the rifle, how to breathe and squeeze rather than pull. When she hit the center mark on her 5th try, his whoop of pride made her laugh, the first real laugh in months. "You're a natural," he said, grinning. "Or you're a good teacher. Can it be both?" The ease between them grew, but so did the tension. Eleanor noticed the way Jacob's eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking, the way his breath caught when she accidentally brushed against him, reaching for the coffee pot, the way he'd clench his fists and retreat to the barn when the air in the cabin grew too thick with unspoken things. She felt it too, the pull toward him, dangerous and sweet. The desire to know if his hands, so careful with everything he touched, would feel like safety against her skin. But fear held her back. Richard had started gentle too, before revealing his true nature. One evening, while Eleanor mended a torn shirt by lamplight, Jacob broke the silence. "Tell me something true about yourself. Something that has nothing to do with pain." She looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I know what you're running from. But who were you before? What did you love?" Eleanor set down the mending, thinking. "I wanted to be a teacher. Before my parents died, I was studying at the schoolhouse, helping with the younger children. I loved seeing them understand something new, watching their faces light up." A sad smile crossed her lips. "Richard said teaching was foolish, that my only job was managing his house." "You'd make an excellent teacher," Jacob said. "You've got patience, and you explain things clearly, like when you showed me that better way to knead bread dough." You remember that? I remember everything you say. The admission hung between them, weighted with meaning. Eleanor's pulse quickened. What about you? She asked softly. Who were you before you came to the mountains? Jacob leaned back, his face shadowed. I was a cavalry soldier, fought in the war, then stayed on out west. Saw things that made me question what kind of man I wanted to be. He paused. I killed people, Eleanor. Maybe some who deserved it. Maybe some who were just on the wrong side. After Sarah died, I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't take orders that destroy more families. So I claimed this land, built this cabin, and promised myself I'd hurt no one again. That's why you live alone. Seems safer that way, for everyone. His eyes met hers, until you showed up and reminded me that some things are worth the risk. Eleanor's breath stopped. Jacob, I'm not asking anything, he said quickly. Just speaking truth like you did. You make this place feel like a home instead of hiding spot. Before she could respond, a sound split the night, glass shattering. Jacob was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand, positioning himself between Eleanor and the door. Stay behind me, he ordered, voice hard. The door crashed open. Richard stood in the threshold, wild-eyed and reeking of whiskey, a pistol in his shaking hand. Found you, whore, he snarled. Thought you could run? You're my wife, my property. Get out of my house, Jacob said, cold and steady, his rifle aimed at Richard's chest. This doesn't concern you, mountain man. She belongs to me. I've got a legal right. You've got nothing, Jacob cut him off. No man has the right to terrorize a woman. You can leave walking, or you can leave bleeding. Your choice. Richard laughed, bitter and cruel. You think I'm afraid of you? I've tracked her for weeks. I'm not leaving without her. He cocked the pistol, aiming past Jacob at Eleanor. Come here, Eleanor. Now. Time fractured. Eleanor saw Jacob's finger tighten on the trigger, saw Richard's hand steady with malicious intent, saw her future collapsing back into nightmare, and something inside her, something that had been broken and was slowly healing, surged forward. No, she said, stepping beside Jacob. I'm not going anywhere with you. Eleanor, get back, Jacob started. Richard's face contorted with rage. You dare defy me? He swung the pistol fully toward her. Jacob fired. The shot cracked through the cabin, deafening. Richard's pistol clattered to the floor as he grabbed his shoulder, blood blooming through his shirt. He stumbled backward, shock replacing fury. Next one goes through your heart, Jacob promised, already reloading. Now get on your horse and ride. If I ever see you near this mountain again, I won't aim for your shoulder. Richard's eyes burned with impotent hatred, but pain and fear won. He scrambled out the door, and they heard hoofbeats fading into the night. Eleanor's legs gave out. Jacob caught her, lowering them both to the floor, his arms solid around her shaking body. She pressed her face against his chest, feeling his heart hammer, his breath ragged. You're safe, he murmured into her hair. I've got you. You're safe. He could have killed you, she choked out. He could have, but he didn't. We're both here, together. That word, together. Eleanor lifted her head, meeting Jacob's storm-gray eyes. In them, she saw fear transmuting to relief. And beneath that, something deeper, something she felt echoing in her own chest. I thought I'd lost you, before I ever really had you, Jacob whispered, his thumb brushing away her tears. Jacob, I know it's too soon. I know you need time. But Eleanor, He stopped, struggling with words. "Stay with me in the mountains," he said, his voice raw with emotion, "and I promise no one will ever hurt you again." The declaration hit her like sunrise after endless night. She reached up, touching his face, feeling the rough stubble, the warmth of living skin. "What if I hurt you? Then I'll heal. What if you don't hurt me? What if we're something good?" Eleanor searched his face, finding only honesty. "I'm afraid." "So am I. Afraid I'll fail you like I failed Sarah. Afraid I'm not enough. Afraid you'll realize you deserve better than a scarred soldier hiding in the woods. You're not hiding. You're healing." She pressed her palm over his heart. "And so am I. Maybe we can heal together." "Together," Jacob repeated, covering her hand with his. "I like that word." They sat on the cabin floor as the fire burned low, holding each other while the mountain wind whispered through the pines. For the first time since her parents died, Eleanor felt the possibility of peace. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of something stronger. Over the following weeks, they rebuilt what Richard had shattered. Not just the broken window, but Eleanor's fractured sense of safety. Jacob showed her how to bar the door, where he kept the spare rifle, how to read the forest for approaching danger. But more importantly, he showed her how to trust again. It started small, Jacob asking permission before touching her hand, Eleanor choosing to sit closer by the fire, Jacob reading to her from Whitman while she mended clothes, his voice a soothing rumble, Eleanor teaching him to dance, laughing when he stepped on her toes, feeling his arms around her waist without flinching. "Go slow," she whispered one evening when he pulled her closer, his lips near her temple. "It hurts sometimes, the learning to feel again." "I'll die before I hurt you," Jacob promised. "We'll go as slow as you need, a lifetime if necessary." But Eleanor surprised herself by not wanting slow forever. One night, while snowflakes began dusting the windows in earnest, she kissed him first, standing on her toes by the fireplace, pressing her lips to his with deliberate intention. Jacob froze, then melted, his hands coming up to cradle her face like she was made of something precious. The kiss was gentle, questioning, and when Eleanor didn't pull away but leaned in instead, his arms circled her carefully. "Eleanor," he breathed against her mouth. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure I want this, want you, want us." She pulled back enough to see his eyes. "I'm sure I'm falling in love with you, Jacob Brennan." His expression cracked open with joy. "I fell in love with you the moment you refused to trade your mother's ring for charity. When you stood there bruised and starving, but still proud, still fierce." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips again. "You're the strongest person I've ever known." They stood wrapped in each other, as the first real snow of winter painted the world white outside. And when Jacob whispered, "Marry me," not because you need protection, but because I need you, Eleanor didn't hesitate. Yes. The wedding took place on Christmas morning with the circuit preacher who happened through Silver Creek. Jacob wore his best shirt, Eleanor a simple blue dress they'd bought in town. Her first new dress since her parents died, chosen by her, paid for with her wages. No bruises marked her skin now, no fear shadowed her eyes. When Jacob slipped a new ring on her finger, not gold, but silver worked with mountain flowers, she felt only joy. "I promise to cherish you," Jacob said, his voice thick, "to stand beside you, not over you, to be your partner in all things." "I promise to trust you," Eleanor replied, "to build a life with you, to love you fiercely and without reservation." When they kissed as husband and wife, The small congregation of mountain folk and townsfolk cheered. Jacob swept Eleanor into his arms, spinning her, both of them laughing like children. The ride back up the mountain felt different now. Not a journey to hiding, but coming home. Jacob helped Eleanor down, and together they walked into the cabin that now belonged to them both. "Mrs. Brennan," Jacob said, testing the name. "Mr. Brennan," Eleanor replied, smiling. "Though I prefer Eleanor, and I prefer you just as Jacob." "Just as Jacob, then, and just as Eleanor." He pulled her close. "Together." "Together," she agreed, and kissed him beneath the threshold of their life. Winter passed in a cocoon of snowdrifts and firelight. Jacob taught Eleanor to track deer, to recognize animal signs in the snow, to split wood without blistering her hands. Eleanor taught Jacob to cook more than stew, to appreciate poetry, to see that vulnerability wasn't weakness. They learned each other's bodies slowly, tenderly, with patience and laughter. Jacob worshipped each scar Richard had left, replacing painful memories with gentle ones. Eleanor traced the bullet wound on Jacob's shoulder, the saber mark across his ribs, learning the map of his survival. "You're beautiful," she told him one night, her fingers trailing down his chest. "You're everything," he replied, pulling her against him, his hands reverent on her skin. When spring arrived, Eleanor planted a garden twice the size of the previous year. Jacob built an addition to the cabin, a room he said mysteriously was for the future. Eleanor understood when she realized she was pregnant. Jacob's joy so bright it rivaled the summer sun. "What, having a baby?" he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "A baby. Our baby." "Our baby," Eleanor confirmed, watching him process the miracle of it. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set fire to the mountain peaks, Eleanor leaned against Jacob's shoulder. "Do you ever regret finding me?" she asked softly. Jacob turned to look at her, his expression serious. "I regret every moment before I found you. Every day I lived half alive in these mountains, thinking I was safer alone." He kissed her temple. "You didn't just need saving, Eleanor. You saved me too. We saved each other." "We did," he agreed. "Together." Eleanor smiled, her hand resting on the small swell of her belly, their future growing inside her. The mountains rose eternal around them, no longer a hiding place, but a sanctuary built on choice, on love freely given and fiercely protected. She'd run to these peaks broken and terrified, trading a ring for survival. She'd stayed because a good man offered safety without conditions, and she'd thrived because together they'd built something neither could have created alone. A home where fear couldn't follow, where love grew wild and strong like the aspens, where two wounded souls had healed into something whole. "Stay with me in the mountains," Jacob had promised, and Eleanor had, forever. Sarah Grace Brennan entered the world on a crisp October morning, her first cries echoing through the cabin like mountain bells. Jacob held his daughter with hands that had killed and built and healed, now trembling with the weight of new life. "She's perfect," he whispered, tears streaming unashamedly down his weathered face. "Eleanor, she's absolutely perfect." Eleanor, exhausted and radiant, smiled at the sight of her husband, cradling their daughter. "She has your eyes. And your stubbornness, I'd wager," Jacob replied, gently placing Sarah in Eleanor's arms. She came 2 weeks early, on her own schedule. The midwife from Silver Creek, a tough woman named Martha, packed her supplies with a satisfied nod. Strong baby, strong mother. You did well, Eleanor. She glanced at Jacob. And you didn't faint, which is more than I can say for most new fathers. Jacob laughed, the sound giddy with relief and joy. Face down Confederate cavalry, but nothing prepared me for this. As Martha rode down the mountain, Jacob sat beside Eleanor's bed, his finger held tight in Sarah's impossibly small fist. I never thought I'd have this, he admitted quietly. A family, a daughter, a reason to believe in tomorrow. You have it now, Eleanor said, watching the two people she loved most in the world. We all do. The first winter with Sarah was a baptism by fire and love. Sleepless nights, endless feedings, the terror of every small cough or fever. But also Sarah's first smile, directed at Jacob while he sang a half-remembered lullaby. Her fascination with the firelight, the way she'd quiet instantly in Eleanor's arms, as if she knew she was safe. Jacob built a cradle from pine, carving elk and mountains into the headboard. Eleanor sewed tiny dresses from fabric they'd bought in Silver Creek, her stitches careful and precise. They took turns walking the floor when Sarah fussed, sang to her, read to her from books she couldn't possibly understand, but seemed to enjoy anyway. She's going to be brilliant, Jacob declared, one evening, watching Sarah track a dust mote in the lamplight with intense focus. Look at that concentration. She's 3 months old, love. She's just learning to see. Brilliant seeing, Jacob insisted, making Eleanor laugh. But their mountain sanctuary wasn't immune to the outside world. In Sarah's 6th month, a rider came up the trail, a U.S. Marshal named Tom Garrett, weathered and serious. Jacob Brennan, he called from horseback, hand near his sidearm. Jacob stepped out, rifle visible but lowered. That's me. State your business. Got a warrant here for Richard Thompson, assault, attempted murder, theft. Word is he came through these parts last fall. Garrett's eyes were sharp. Got witnesses say he left with a gunshot wound. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, Sarah in her arms, her face pale but steady. I'm Eleanor Brennan, formerly Thompson. Richard is my former husband. He found me here and attempted to kill both me and Jacob. Jacob defended us. Garrett studied her, taking in the protective way Jacob moved closer, the baby in her arms. You file for divorce? Not yet, Eleanor admitted. I've been afraid he'd find me if I did. Well, he won't be finding anyone anymore. Garrett dismounted, pulling a folded paper from his saddlebag. Richard Thompson died 3 weeks ago in Denver. Tried to rob the wrong card game. Man he shot at turned out to be faster. Before he died, he confessed to multiple crimes, including beating his wife and threatening witnesses. Eleanor's knees weakened. Jacob caught her, steadying her while she processed the news. He's dead? Truly dead? Yes, ma'am, which means you're a widow, not a wife. And this, he handed her the paper, is your copy of his death certificate. You're free. Free. The word felt foreign and impossibly light. Eleanor looked at Jacob, saw her own relief mirrored in his face. Thank you, Marshal, Jacob said, extending his hand. Garrett shook it, then tipped his hat to Eleanor. Ma'am, I'm sorry for what you endured, but I'm glad you found safety. He glanced around the homestead, taking in the neat garden, the strong cabin, the chickens pecking contentedly. Looks like you've built something good here. We have, Eleanor said firmly. We really have. After Garrett rode away, Jacob pulled Eleanor into his arms. Sarah nestled between them. It's over, he murmured into her hair. He can't hurt you ever again. Eleanor nodded, letting the weight of years of fear finally slide from her shoulders. I need to tell you something, she said, pulling back to look at him. When we married, part of me was still afraid. afraid Richard would come back, that our happiness was temporary, that I'd wake up and find this was a dream. And now? Now I know this is real. You're real. Our family is real. She kissed him softly. I'm not running anymore. Jacob, I'm home. You've always been home, he replied. From the moment you stepped into this cabin. That night, after Sarah fell asleep, they sat by the fire as they had 100 times before. But this time, something fundamental had shifted. Eleanor wasn't a refugee anymore. She was a woman who'd survived, healed, and chosen her life deliberately. I want to do something, she said suddenly. Something that matters. Jacob looked up from the piece of wood he was whittling. What are you thinking? Teaching. Remember when I told you I wanted to be a teacher? There are families down in the valley, scattered around Silver Creek. Their children have no school, no education. Her eyes lit with purpose. What if we started one? Here or in town? Jacob considered, then smiled. The old church building in Silver Creek is abandoned. Could be converted into a schoolhouse with some work. He reached over, taking her hand. I think it's a perfect idea. You'd be an amazing teacher. You'd help me? Eleanor, I'd help you build a castle if that's what you wanted. A schoolhouse is easy. He squeezed her hand. Besides, Sarah will need education eventually. Might as well start building it now. Over the next months, they worked toward the dream. Jacob rallied the scattered homesteaders and townsfolk, convincing them of the school's value. Eleanor studied her old teaching materials, planned lessons, gathered books. Together, they transformed the dilapidated church into a bright, welcoming classroom. The Silver Creek School opened on a brilliant spring morning, with 12 students ranging from 6 to 14 years old. Eleanor stood at the front of the room, chalk in hand, and felt something click into place, a piece of herself she'd thought lost forever. Welcome, she said to the nervous children. My name is Mrs. Brennan, and I'm here to help you discover how big the world is and how much you're capable of learning. One little girl, Sarah Martin, raised her hand timidly. Ma'am, is it true you came here running from a bad man? Eleanor could have deflected, but she saw the fear in Sarah's eyes, the same fear she'd once carried. Instead, she knelt down to the girl's level. Yes, it's true. I was very afraid, and I ran to these mountains looking for safety. And you know what I found? I found that being afraid doesn't make you weak. Running from danger doesn't make you a coward. And starting over doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're brave. She looked at all the children. Every one of you has the strength to survive hard things and build beautiful things. That's what I'm going to teach you, along with reading and arithmetic. The children stared at her with new respect. Sarah Martin smiled. Jacob watched from the doorway, their now toddling daughter holding his hand, and felt his heart swell with pride. This woman who'd arrived broken and terrified had become a pillar of strength for an entire community. That evening, as they rode back up the mountain, Sarah asleep in Eleanor's arms, Jacob spoke his thoughts aloud. You know what you are? Shh. What's that? A force of nature. You survived a monster, healed yourself, built a family, and now you're shaping the future of every child in that valley. He shook his head in wonder. How did I get so lucky? Eleanor laughed. Luck had nothing to do with it. You chose to see a person worth saving when I couldn't see it myself. You chose patience when I needed time. You chose to love me when it would have been easier to stay alone. Easiest choice I ever made. Liar. Eleanor teased. I was prickly and terrified and probably insufferable. You are perfect, Jacob corrected. You still are. As the years rolled by, their life gained richness and complexity. The school thrived, with Eleanor teaching 3 days a week. Jacob expanded the homestead, adding more land, more livestock. Sarah grew bright and curious, reading by age 4, asking questions that kept both her parents on their toes. 2 years after Sarah's birth, a son followed, Thomas, named for Jacob's father. Then another daughter, Margaret, called Maggie. The cabin expanded with each child, rooms added, laughter multiplying. But life in the mountains was never entirely peaceful. One harsh February, when Sarah was 7 and helping Eleanor in the schoolhouse, a blizzard struck with terrifying speed. The children who'd walked to school from distant homesteads couldn't return home safely. We'll keep them here until it passes, Eleanor decided, already organizing supplies. There's wood for the stove, and I packed extra food. Send word to their parents if anyone can get through. But no one could get through. The blizzard raged for 2 days, snow piling 6 feet deep, wind howling like wolves. Eleanor kept 12 frightened children calm with stories, songs, and lessons. She rationed food carefully, kept the stove burning, made sleeping pallets from every available blanket. On the second night, little Timothy Crawford developed a fever. Eleanor held him, cold cloth on his forehead, praying silently as she'd learned to do in her darkest moments. The other children huddled close, scared not just of the storm but of losing their friend. Miss Eleanor? Sarah Martin, now 13, whispered, "Is Timothy going to die?" "Not if I have anything to say about it," Eleanor replied firmly. "But I need your help, all of you. We're going to take turns keeping Timothy warm and comfortable. We're going to tell him stories so he knows he's not alone. We're going to be brave together. Can you do that?" The children nodded, forming a circle of protection around their sick classmate. They told stories, sang lullabies, took turns holding Timothy's hand. Eleanor watched them transform from frightened children into a community, understanding that courage multiplied when shared. At dawn on the 3rd day, the storm broke. Eleanor stepped outside to find the world transformed into white silence, and Jacob, along with 6 other fathers, struggling through chest-deep snow toward the schoolhouse. "Eleanor!" Jacob's shout was half sob, half relief. He crashed through the door, pulling her into his arms with desperate strength. "Thank God. I fought when the storm wouldn't break. I fought." "We're all fine," Eleanor assured him, even as her own relief made her shake. "Everyone's safe. Timothy has a fever, but he's stable." The fathers gathered their children, thanking Eleanor with words that fell short of their gratitude. Timothy's father, a gruff rancher named Bill Crawford, actually cried as he held his son. "You saved my boy," he said to Eleanor. "You saved all of them." "They saved each other," Eleanor corrected, gesturing to the children. "They were so brave. They took care of Timothy and each other. I just guided them." Jacob studied his wife, exhausted, dirty, magnificent in her strength. "You're a hero," he said quietly. "I'm a teacher," Eleanor replied. "It's what we do." The story of the blizzard spread through the valley, cementing Eleanor's reputation as someone exceptional. More families sent their children to the school. Eleanor trained 2 assistant teachers to help with the growing enrollment. The community built a larger building, a proper schoolhouse with multiple rooms. Jacob watched it all with pride tinged with concern. "You're working yourself too hard," he said one evening, finding Eleanor still grading papers long after midnight. You've got 3 children at home, a school full of students, and you're trying to do everything yourself. I'm fine, Eleanor insisted, though the circles under her eyes told a different story. Eleanor, Jacob knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to not be everything to everyone all the time. But the children need a teacher who's not exhausted. Our children need a mother who's present, not just surviving. His voice was gentle but firm. You've spent so long proving you're strong that you've forgotten it's okay to be human, to need help, to say no. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I'm afraid if I slow down, if I'm not constantly useful, She stopped, struggling with old fears. You'll what? Become worthless? Eleanor, you're not valuable because of what you do. You're valuable because of who you are. Jacob cupped her face. The woman I fell in love with wasn't just strong. She was real, flawed, human. Let yourself be that again. The words broke through her defenses. Eleanor leaned into Jacob's embrace and cried for the girl she'd been, for the woman she'd had to become, for the exhaustion she'd been carrying like armor. I'm so tired, she admitted. I know. So rest. Let me carry some of this. Let others help. You don't have to save the world single-handedly. Eleanor laughed wetly. Just the Valley's children? Even that can be a team effort. Jacob kissed her forehead. Come to bed. The papers can wait. The world can wait. Right now, you need sleep. She let him lead her to their bedroom. Let him help her undress. Let herself collapse into the comfort of their bed. And for the first time in months, she slept deeply, dreamlessly, held safe in Jacob's arms. When she woke late the next morning, she found Jacob had already fed the children breakfast, packed their lunches, and sent them off to play. He'd made her coffee, strong and sweet the way she liked it, and was reading in the chair beside their bed. Good morning, Sleeping Beauty, he said with a smile. I can't remember the last time I slept past dawn, Eleanor admitted, sitting up. Too long, so I'm making a new rule. Every Sunday, you sleep as late as you want. No teaching, no grading papers, no responsibilities except being yourself. He handed her the coffee. Deal? Eleanor considered arguing, then recognized the gift for what it was, permission to be imperfect. Deal. They spent that Sunday as a family, simple and sweet, playing with the children, walking through the autumn woods, reading by the fire. Eleanor felt pieces of herself settling back into place, remembered that she was more than her work, more than her past, more than her strength. That night, making love with Jacob, she felt present in a way she hadn't in months. Not performing, not proving anything, just being, vulnerable and whole and deeply loved. I love you, she whispered against his chest afterward. Thank you for seeing me, even when I lose sight of myself. I love you, Jacob replied. All of you. The strong parts and the tired parts and everything in between. When Sarah turned 15, she announced her intention to become a doctor. Not a nurse, a doctor. Eleanor and Jacob exchanged glances across the dinner table, recognizing their daughter's fierce determination. Medical schools don't accept women, Jacob said, carefully. Then I'll be the first they do accept, Sarah shot back. Or I'll learn from a doctor who will teach me privately. Or I'll go east, where there are women's medical colleges. Her chin lifted in pure Brennan stubbornness. I'm going to be a doctor. You taught me I could do anything, and I believe you. Eleanor felt her throat tighten with pride and fear. You're right. You can do anything. But Sarah, the world will fight you every step. Good, Sarah said. I come from a mother who fought her way to freedom and a father who built a home from nothing. Fighting is in my blood." Jacob laughed, a sound of pure joy. "She's definitely ours." He reached across the table, gripping Sarah's hand. "Then we'll fight with you. Whatever you need, tutors, books, connections, you'll have it." Over the next years, they made it happen. Jacob contacted old Arnie friends now working in hospitals, securing letters of introduction. Eleanor taught Sarah advanced sciences, mathematics, everything the school curriculum could offer. They saved money, made plans, prepared their daughter for a future they could barely imagine. When Sarah left for medical school in Philadelphia at 18, the entire valley came to see her off. Eleanor held her daughter tight, memorizing the feel of her. "Are you scared?" Eleanor whispered. "Terrified," Sarah admitted. "But you taught me that being scared doesn't mean stopping. It means going forward anyway." "You're going to change the world," Eleanor said fiercely. "You're going to save lives and break barriers and make us so proud." "I already am proud," Jacob added, his voice rough. "You're braver than any soldier I ever knew." As the stagecoach carried Sarah toward her future, Jacob pulled Eleanor against his side. Thomas, now 16, and Maggie, 14, flanked their parents, all of them watching until Sarah disappeared from view. "We raised her right," Jacob said. "We raised her to leave us," Eleanor replied, tears streaming. "We raised her to fly," Jacob corrected. "That's what good parents do." Eleanor leaned into her husband's strength, grateful for this man who'd given her not just safety, but partnership, not just love, but freedom to grow. Together, they walked back to the wagon, their remaining children chattering excitedly about their sister's adventure. The years continued their steady march. Thomas took over much of the homestead work, showing Jacob's skill with his hands and Eleanor's methodical intelligence. Maggie discovered a gift for painting, capturing the mountains in oils and watercolors that people from Denver started purchasing. Eleanor continued teaching, training new teachers, watching generations of Valley children learn and grow. Jacob's hair turned silver, his hands more weathered, but his eyes still lit when Eleanor entered a room. They celebrated 25 years of marriage on a summer evening, their grown children home for the occasion. Sarah, now Dr. Sarah Brennan, was establishing a medical practice in Denver. Thomas had married a rancher's daughter and was expecting his first child. Maggie was preparing for an art exhibition in San Francisco. "Did you ever imagine this?" Eleanor asked Jacob as they stood on their porch, watching the sun paint the mountains gold. "All those years ago, when you found a desperate woman at a trading post?" "I imagined saving someone," Jacob replied. "I never imagined she'd save me right back. I never imagined we'd build this. Children, grandchildren coming, a legacy of education and healing and art." He turned to her, his expression tender. "You exceeded every dream I was brave enough to have." "We exceeded them together," Eleanor corrected. She took his hand, feeling the calluses earned through decades of building, protecting, loving. "Jacob Brennan, you're still the best decision I ever made." "Second best," Jacob teased. "First was choosing to stay in these mountains." "True," Eleanor laughed. "These mountains gave me everything." As the stars emerged, their children's voices drifting from inside the cabin, Eleanor reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From terrified refugee to confident woman. From broken victim to fierce protector. From someone who thought she had nothing to offer to someone who'd shaped the future of an entire community. And through it all, Jacob, steady as the mountains, strong as the pines, patient as winter turning to spring. The man who'd promised no one would ever hurt her again, and had kept that promise, not by shielding her from the world, but by standing beside her as she learned to face it. "Stay with me in the mountains," he'd said all those years ago. And she had. Through blizzards and births, through fear and triumph, through every season that had carved them into who they'd become. She'd stayed, she'd thrived, she'd loved, and she'd be staying still. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Eleanor and Jacob's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.